Welcome back to the video, guys, at VAG Technics. So in this video we will be working on an Audi Q7 2017. This gentleman is actually from London. He was recommended by a local friend, and we will be doing a timing chain replacement. This will be a prevention replacement. That means there's nothing wrong with it, there's no fault codes, and we will be just replacing the parts to prevent any kind of rattling in the future. So the car done 82,000 miles. It has full Audi service history. After it ran out of warranty, the owner basically was servicing the car a bit different way, a bit more regular oil changes. So I'm really wondering what's going inside the engine. We will be checking the intake, the state of the timing chains with all the guides, and check the engine generally. So if you're looking to buy a car, something like this, with a similar mileage, and you have a full service history, probably will be worth it for you to know what's the condition of the engine from inside. So step number one, we'll have to put it on the ramp, and we will be removing the 3-liter TDI from the chassis.
And before we even start, you can see there's a damaged wiring from O2 sensor on the exhaust. I'm not sure actually what happened. I will be able to repair it. Once the engine was removed, we take all the covers off, and as you can tell, the engine looks good with no damage, and the oil tension seems to be fine. However, the intake doesn't look too good.
Okay guys, so here we are. They've removed the engine. There's no footage because you've seen it too many times, and obviously the CRT engine is on the table. So it didn't have any issues actually. Like I said, over 80,000 miles, full Audi service history, pretty much one owner, and this is the condition of the engine. My opinion is that probably the oil changes should have been done more recently, more often, because the internals are a bit blackish, darkish. It's like really heavy diesel oil inside, and obviously it's running through the regenerations and everything, so the oil is basically abused. And I think long life, which is over 20,000 miles on one oil, is absolutely ridiculous. So we are saying 8, 9, up to 10,000 is the limit. When it comes to the engine, before we remove it, we did find one problem, and there was a broken wire or cut wire on the exhaust for a last sensor. I believe it's O2 sensor, and it wasn't working. There was a fault or something happened to it, because when you plug it on the diagnostic, it didn't show absolutely anything at all. It didn't have any rattle, didn't have any oil leaks, major oil leaks on the engine. So basically this is like a prevention timing chain replacement. And of course this is the third generation of the 3-liter TDI engine, where you can see the engineers from Germany have done a bit of a different engineering when it comes to the camshafts and the whole gear setup. As a second generation, it still have 2 timing chains, which is much easier than the first generation, when they have altogether 4 timing chains, more tensioners, which can lead to more faults. Okay, so German engineering. So all this should actually save the polar bears. How it should save the polar bears? It's a really difficult question, because everybody tried to make the engine small as possible. They want to make the engines as most efficient as possible, and how they want to do it is they will cut down the oil pressure, because more oil is getting onto the components, it's making more resistance, which means you have to use more fuel to spin the engine around, which means you will burn more fuel, which means loads of polar bears will die. However, the only problem is what will happen if the oil pressure is not efficient around the engine, around the timing chains, around the tensioners, around these funny gears. Because I suggest that, well, if you're owning this engine, I would definitely get a oil map done, which means software wise you will lift up the oil pressure, which this engine has a variable oil pump. It also have a solenoid which is placed next to the oil pump, so it's regulating the oil pressure in the system, so the engine has less frictions and is running more efficient. However, what will happen is that all these gears will worn out, because from time to time when the oil pressure is low, because let's say the polar bears, obviously they're not lubricated enough, and this is the damage. And especially this is the most stupid design I ever seen, because this gear, which is running on the chain, is basically turning this wheel, and that's turning the other cam. So basically one is turning the second is turning the third, which this first one is offsetted, so you can actually turn it and you are setting the clearance between them. So according to the manual, it's very funny how you're gonna set up the clearance between it, because every single time you're gonna try to tighten, the clearance is different. So if the clearance is too big between the wheels, it will rattle. If the clearance is too small, it will not rattle, but it will worn out very quickly, and then it will rattle anyways. So we already have few people, even directly from Audi, coming to us when Audi under warranty replaced one side of the cams and didn't replace the other side, and the car meanwhile went out of warranty and we have to done the other side for them, which is very sad situation. Also, speaking of polar bears, emissions, efficiency and all this funny stuff, like any engine, diesel engine has an EGR, which means you are recycling the air which already went through a combustion chamber, and unfortunately the result is carbon buildup. So I think this is not really good, and especially we advise the owner to clean up the intake, because all this carbon is basically going into the engine and it might cause some serious internal damage, injector issues and loads of other funny stuff. So we already remove everything what we need to remove, and obviously this is how the intake looks like from the EGR side. Before the EGR is nice and clean, so if there wasn't any EGR, this is how the intake would look like. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that. So you can see the massive buildup of carbon. So I think we will be cleaning all this, so that will be fun. And speaking of the whole engine and cleaning, there was few oil leaks, especially on the intake pipe. This gasket was leaking a bit, so there's a bit of oil coming out of there. Also the rocker covers, they are a bit greasy from the diesel, probably how we disconnect the injectors, bit of a diesel leaked out, but you can see there was a leak over here. So all new gaskets going on there, that's not a problem at all. Otherwise the engine looks pretty much clean from the front and the back. So we will be not replacing any more gaskets in this particular case, and I think we can proceed with the timing change up, which we have everything already here. So as usual, everything is genuine, and as usual we are replacing everything. So whatever we will touch, whatever we will remove, whatever we will do, we always put new parts, new gaskets, new O-rings, new washers, new bolts and new everything. So the job is done in a high standard as it can be done. Of course, the whole setup as you see it now, it's over, I think we pay like 1,300-1,400 pounds for all this. So the base job what we're charging at the moment for these 3 liters is 3,950 pounds, and obviously you see what it takes. Drop the engine, separate the gearbox, open up the engine from the back, and loads of work needs doing. So probably usually it's job from Monday to Friday, sometimes a bit longer, because even now we will be taking the inlet manifold off, cleaning all that. So that will take more time if you find out that we have to get more gaskets, which maybe they are not in stock, so they have to be ordered in, which will take a couple of days. So yeah, all the time the jobs are getting delayed a bit, but we will leave Mr. Dave to continue with it. He will disassemble the whole timing chain setup and we will install everything new.
So we start with the cleaning process of the intake and the intake valves. So we use walnut cleaning and we use a chemical cleaner as well, BG product, for such things. And I must say I was quite surprised with the result. This is the bank 2 which is not clean. You see in the bank 1 which was already cleaned up, so the result is much better. And as you can tell, the amount of carbon on this intake is huge. So basically definitely needs cleaning, because like I said, it can do further damage to the engine. The inlet manifold wasn't easy, but they've managed to clean it up, and once it was all done we put the timing chains on, and then this happened.
Okay guys, so as you can tell, the CRT engine from the Q7, the new timing chain is stripped down. Reason for that is, here's the footage.
So when we will clean up the engine, we use a bit of a press there to actually have a look at the sprockets on the cams, and where scenario happened, they are worn out. You can see on the footage how the material is missing on each sprocket. So unfortunately this is the result of a low oil pressure or low lubrication. On this footage here you can see how the sprocket is from 2 pieces and the teeth are not basically overgapping. This is bank 1, and if we have a look at bank 2, the other side of the sprocket, which is pre-tensioning, the gap is overlapping edge to edge, so that means that it's completely worn out, and that was way over the limit. So sooner or later this will be a catastrophic failure, or it will start tapping or making some funny noises. So we have to contact the owner now, tell him bad news, and see how the situation will work out.
And it's quite easy. Unfortunately, the owner, when he dropped us the car, he didn't mention that there's any fault or anything. I actually drove the car as well, because I gave him a lift in his car onto the train station, because he's not local, and basically there was nothing telling us that there is something wrong. So we have the car on the diagnostic before, there was no fault codes or anything, and obviously there was no rattling noise as well. We were told that we are doing a timing chain prevention replacement, which we already did, and then we actually find out the issues with the camshafts. So we have already few people contacting us regarding this issue. Back in Europe, I have friends in Slovakia. They basically doing very often these camshaft jobs, because there's loads of import cars from Germany, which a bit of a high mileage or kilometers, and obviously they've worn out. So the question now is, why are these worn out? And reason why I'm asking why, because see this and that, all this was almost £4,000, absolutely mental. So the material is stupidly expensive, and obviously there's no way around it. So you can't even take off the cam gears or these sprockets off, because basically they are pressed in. There's nobody who's making them as a replacement, and as you can tell, it's quite complicated component. So we have all these gears, and plus they are pre-tensioned with a spring onto the second gear. So how it's actually driven, you have this main sprocket here, where is the chain, and obviously this is driven, or the camshaft is driven from this, but only one cam, and then the other cam is driven by the first cam. So it's like a very funny setup, and this is already the new gear sprocket, and obviously look at the play from the factory. So this is the axial play, and look at this, see how it's moving. So I know somebody of you will say now, like, well, obviously it's dry, there's no oil, so there's a bit of a bigger play. But if you have a look at the other side, guys, there's no oil coming in there. There's just a bolt coming into the cylinder head. There's nothing was lubricating the bearing inside of it, and there's nothing was lubricating directly the gears on the cams. So that is bringing us to a point when we're advising everyone, especially with these 160, 200 kilowatts and even 210 kilowatts engine, which is in the new A6, the hybrid generator, funny thing, and you have exactly the same setup on the cams. Reason why they've done it, because they tried to save the space, so they put the sprocket in the middle of the cylinder head to basically make the head a bit narrower, but they make a problem. Yeah. The whole question now is how we can prevent all this from going wrong. Yeah. Because if you have a look at these camshafts, you can probably see how the material is missing. The coating is completely gone. And if you have a closer look, yeah, in the middle where they are coming together, there is like half thickness of the tooth. So there's like really huge bit of material missing from both of them. They didn't make any noise, but I spoke with the guys where they already have one engine, where this sprocket for the tensioner, whereas the spring was already broken, there were a few teeth missing. So that's a bit of an extreme situation, but it did happen. It can cause lots of damage. But mainly, yeah, question now is, are they different? Well, again, this part number compared to the new part number is different, but we have no idea what's actually different about them. So from a visual point of view, we can actually tell that looks like the coating is different on them, and especially this gear over here it's like a hardened material or cemented or something. So I don't know how much longer it will last, because I believe the variable oil pressure is harming the engine. Yeah, but then I'm thinking again, if these are not directly lubricated anyhow, if you're gonna rise the oil pressure, is actually going more oil on them. Yeah, because by my opinion, the only way how the oil is getting on there is only one nozzle. Yeah, one, and one is spraying oil onto the chain for the timing for the crank and cams, and one is spraying oil for the secondary chain for the high pressure fuel pump. So the only way I think how the oil is getting there is by the centrifugal force, how it's spraying around onto the cover and it's only leaking down somehow onto the sprockets. Yeah, that's the only way how I think it can be lubricated, because on the cylinder head there's no channel was lubricating this, and also on these aluminium brackets which are holding the cams, there's nothing there as well. So like I said, the only way how they can be actually lubricated is that the oil what's holding onto the top of the rocker cover is coming down to them, and that's it. So yeah, but that's just my theory, because we are actually taking a really big responsibility here, guys, to be honest. Yeah, because it's expensive material, and if we will not do it correctly, all this will go in the bin. And of course that company, see that company, they will not do it under warranty, because you never know. Anyways, how you like our timing tools? What do you say, our timing tools? Great, innit? But back to the topic. Speaking of doing the job, we have a manual how it have to be done. So these camshafts are basically timed up from the back like this. So they have to be equally on the back. And obviously the only timing tool is a drill bit from the front into the aluminium housing. That's the only timing for these two cams. Then those cams will sit onto the cylinder head. These have to be in a certain position, because the inner of the bearing can be basically put as an offset, like on the timing belts when you're pre-tensioning the belt. So this is the same setup, and according to the manual, it's the most retarded setup manual what I ever seen in my life. So the manuals say that you have to tighten it anti-clockwise, like pre-tension it until it will touch the gears on the cams. Yeah, and now you're thinking like, how much? Like, what do you mean by touch? Like touch like a bit, like a bit more or a bit less, or what's touch? Yeah, and then you should loosen it back clockwise by a certain distance, yeah, which is in the manual. However, we've done it a few times already. Reason why the camshafts are off, I'll show you in a minute. But we've done it a few times already, and every single time we've done it according to the manual, and you try to move it, like what's the clearance, every single time it felt different. And if you're building a machine, it can't be built on a feeling, it has to be built on a certain values. So I think the manual should have been done like you should tighten it with the tool like to 5 Newton meters, which will be the force between the two gears, and then you should basically loosen it clockwise, and that's your clearance. Yeah, because if it's gonna be too tight, it will worn out very quickly. If it's gonna be like bigger gap in between the gears, that this pre-tension sprocket will not actually tension it that much, and they will be rattling, and again they will worn out very quickly. So we have to find the sweet spot. But according to the manual, which is the most retarded manual in the world, it's like almost impossible to do it like correctly. So I think Volkswagen found a way how to fuck even the mechanics in the ass, yeah, because it's absolutely unbelievable what's going on with this. And I really don't like the manuals, which are like mystical, like magical, and like Harry Potter stuff, like you never know what will happen. So it is very funny. But yeah, we'll try to do it somehow, because what we actually have done, left side was worn out more than the right side, and obviously we check what's the play between the gears on the less worn side, and obviously we try to sort of implement the same play on the other side according to the manual. But it is still very funny. It is very funny. I'm really hoping we will not mess it up. I'm really hoping that the engine will run sweet after we'll finish it all off. The other thing is, according to the manual, these marks have to be in a certain position against the cylinder head to begin with. And when we took off the sprocket for the chain, this was actually turned completely like this, yeah. So that also makes me wonder if they were putting the engine back together, if it was actually put it back together correctly from the factory, because according to the manual from Audi, it shouldn't have been like that. And it's not like one was done like that, both of them were done like that. And speaking of why are the camshaft not on the car again, well, this is why. So we don't want to risk it, but we think that these hydraulic lifters are dead, because some of them are very soft, some of them you can't even press them down. Yeah, so we decided, just in case to be sure, because it's a engine out job, again in case, we will replace the hydraulic lifters, all of them. So we were waiting Friday for the material. Meanwhile, we have a bit of a chatty chat for a couple of hours. So yeah, that's the situation. And again, it's very funny situation with a 3-liter TDI when you're paying quite loads of money for such a car like a Q7, and you're expecting a bit of a quality, and after 6 years you have a really huge bill coming towards you because something went really wrong. And unfortunately we're not happy as well, because the car's here for a month on the ramp. It's taking the space. The camshaft bits were on back order, so there was nothing we can do really. And again, we were waiting for the hydraulic lifters as well, so that was another extra, probably 1 day delay. So I'm really hoping we'll put it back together. The reason why we don't even want to do it, these 3 liters too much, because it's a huge responsibility. We have to give you or customers a warranty, which is like, you know. And the other thing is, if a low oil pressure potentially can damage the camshaft, sprockets, gears and the whole setup, what will be the bottom end like? Nobody knows. So basically we are providing warranty on the material we're fitting in, but we already heard about problems, occasions when the engine actually sees that because of the low oil pressure directly on the conrod bearing, yeah, which is a huge damage to the engine, and most likely you can't even rebuild it afterwards. So yeah, but that's so far from my complaining about the CRT 3-liter TDI engine. And like I said, I film it onto the other video. Rest of it, I'm really hoping we'll put the engine back together, because these guys want to use the car for a Christmas time, and tick tack, tick tack, tick tack, time is ticking. Monday we will definitely continue. The plan is put the engine back in and just test everything, check everything, and hopefully give the car back to the customer in 100% shape so they can use it.
And here we have the camshafts with the sprockets made out of gold for that money. Unfortunately, they were really expensive and you can't get them just genuine really. So here we are installing the new camshafts into the carriers. The carriers are actually marked with numbers from 1 to 4, so you can't mess up. And the gears are basically time up. There's a dots on each tooth, how it should go, so you can't mess up that as well. And here we have the new carrier with the camshafts going onto the cylinder head, where we already installed the new hydraulic lifters. So the whole setup was actually put back together quite quickly. It wasn't that bad, but we have to wait for them for like 3 weeks. Everything was tied to the Newton meter spec and in a correct sequence as it should be. And once everything was tied down, we basically put the last sprocket, which is a chain driven sprocket, and we set up the gaps in between them. Like I said, the manual is done really weird way. I was expecting it will be explained to the technician a bit better way, but we managed to go through it a few times and we were quite happy with the clearance between the sprockets. So we tried to do the Newton meter spec, and finally we'll be able to release the grenade security pin. And once that was released, it will basically have absolutely no clearance between the two sprockets. So of course, new brackets, all the timing chains was replaced with new oil tensioner, all the components as usual, everything was timed up, tied to the Newton meter spec. And once we were happy with the whole timing setup, we will turn the engine a few times. We have to double check all the timings with our special tools, which in this case is a drill bit. I think it's 5.5 mil. And of course, for the crankshaft, we have an original tool as it should be.
Put all the timing chain covers on with new gaskets, obviously, and now we're just thinking like, how is the bearing lubricated inside? Because even if there's a oil flow going around it, I'm not sure that the oil will go actually directly to the bearings, but you never know. German engineering. So next up are the covers for the camshafts. So new rocker cover gaskets are going on, also with the gaskets for the injectors. We can close the engine finally from the top. The carbon cleaning was sorted. Next up will be probably gearbox.
Even that we've lubricated all the new pads and the chains before we put the engine back in, we always like to crank it a few times to actually build a bit of oil pressure. And once the car was sorted engine wise, it's time to install the immobilizer, what the owner ordered. So we are using these special tools not to damage the original wiring, and this is the result. So the immobilizer is plugged in now. This is the Pro version where you can connect with your mobile phone. And when somebody will jump in the car and don't know the code, obviously the car will start, but it will not move. So that means the engine will start and you will not be able to select the gear. So you can't actually remove the car. You can see I have my foot on the brake. I'm doing whatever I want with the selector, but it will not engage any gear. So once you will put your pin in, which is more like an emergency situation, or you have your phone with you, you can just start up the car. The hazard light is always flashed to confirm that the pin was insert correctly or the phone is in a range, and all of a sudden everything is working fine. So job well done.
Okay guys, so the Q7 is fully done now. We test drive the car for a couple of miles, and before the owner actually took it at the garage, fit front discs and parts, so there were no lights on the cluster. We're not really comfortable to give the owner the car at that point because it was quite a big repair, so I wanted to do a bit of more mileage, but there was no time. It was quite tight time-wise because obviously, like I mentioned, they are going to Poland. So they already left and they managed to get to Poland with no issues. So the car done probably like 1400 miles. Before we gave him the car, Miroslav done a remap. So we also changed the oil pressure. So it went from 1.2 bars to 1.6, 1.7 bars on idle. And also the oil map was actually changed on the higher revs. You have like more specifications in the software, like what oil pressure the oil pump should be making, on what RPM, and also what temperature. So all that was changed. We are really hoping it will prevent in the future from any kind of internal damage. And obviously if you have any kind of a vehicle with similar engine, if it's a CRT in a Q7, A6 or A5, it's probably good to have the oil map done to try to prevent them. We were also talking with few other garages, and obviously we've been told that mainly the old part number again is more common to have a fault like you've seen. So Audi also done loads of recalls regarding the camshafts. However, we already have one occasion when someone went to Audi. They've done it under recall, but there was only problem with bank number 2, let's say, and they only replaced bank number 2 and they still left the bank 1 with the old camshafts. And unfortunately, after a couple of months when the warranty ran out, he had a problem with the side of the cylinder head where the camshafts were not replaced. So it is a funny situation. Most of the cars at the moment run out of warranty anyways. I will be definitely more aware about this problem when you're buying such a car, because this gentleman with the Q7 paid us almost £9,000 for the repair. So we charge £3,950 including VAT for the base job, which was remove the engine, do the timing chains, reseal the engine from the back, whatever is coming off, we'll have a new gasket. Additional thing what we've done for him was the inlet cleaning and the walnut blasting on the valves, and of course almost £4,000 with the camshaft on its own, with the carriers and with the sprockets. So quite expensive bill for a 2016-17 Audi, but unfortunately it needs to be done because we always, when we do such a job, we always try to make aware like what might happen in the near future and try to prevent any kind of damage afterwards. So the owner of this Q7 was like, yeah, if you think it's not good, just get it replaced. So we did replace everything what we thought it's not good, and the condition of the part is like questionable. So that's all from the video, guys. I'm really hoping the owner will enjoy the Q7 with no further issues, and definitely thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video. We have loads of things ready for you. We will be making a forged build for a B8 S4 with a supercharged engine, and we have few engines for a RS4 and RS5 ready to be built. So definitely more videos will be coming up. So we will see you in the next one. See ya.